practicing. So I didn't have a microphone on. So let me just cut. Reminder. If you're using an external microphone, please remember to turn the microphone on, because the camera is not going to turn the microphone on for you if you have an external microphone plugged in. Now, it will, however, start automatically recording your voice and your sound because it has an internal camera. But if you decide that you want to use an external camera for whatever, external microphone for whatever reason, please remember to turn it on. I am bad about turning on my camera. But anyway, I'm practicing right now. I'm practicing for my recap of season 1 of my Stirring the Gumbo podcast. So I have my questions here. So I'm trying to figure out how I look on camera. I think I look good. I think I like this background. So I am going to use this background for my video. And I am going to be answering questions that I wrote for myself as maybe an audience viewer, rather, what they would ask me. So the first question is, why did I start a podcast? And I have all these notes of why I started a podcast, but it's hard to I don't want to read it, but I made all these notes. I mean, I went in here and made all these notes, and I should be able to tell you guys why I started a podcast without referring to these notes. And that's what I'm going to do. So I started a podcast because I finally wanted to get something completed. A project started, some type of creative, artistic project that I wanted to start and finish, because I had a track record of starting and stopping projects, and that wasn't getting me anywhere. So I decided to devote and hold myself accountable and start a podcast, and I did. So early last year, I started. I had the idea that I wanted to start a podcast because, 1, I wanted to finally do a project that I could complete. 2, I wanted to motivate and share knowledge. And 3, I wanted to challenge myself artistically on the production side to get it completed, because I just felt like I had the skills and the training in order to be able to do so. And that's kind of why I started a podcast. I thought that once I put everything and learn everything, and I wanted to show people that if you have a dream and a goal, that if you commit to it and get the courage to do it, that it's you can do it. So that's really the real reason why I started a podcast, right? So, another question. Was I nervous? Of course I was nervous. Who wouldn't be nervous? First time doing something and you don't really know what you're doing, and you're putting yourself out there for the public, for all of public to see. The natural reaction and response is nervousness. I was very nervous, and more than anything, I lacked the courage to do it. So I think I had lack of confidence more than I was nervous. But because I didn't have the confidence, that made me nervous and scared to do it. But somehow I found the courage to get it done. I just had to take the first step. And I think the lack of courage came from low self-esteem and me not believing in myself and not putting myself out there and challenging myself, and just stop listening to what was in my head or listening to what people were saying. And a lot of that comes from low self-esteem. But I had to let go of that, and I had to pull from inside and say, how important is this to me? How bad do you want this? And is it worth doing? And once I was able to get over or gain the courage to get it done and finally start putting out episodes and doing it, I wasn't scared anymore. The fear factor left. So yes, I was nervous, and yes, I did lack the confidence that I needed, but obviously I got over that because I have 7 episodes now of season 1 podcast. I have 7 episodes that I produced. I self-produced them. Next question. Did I find a niche? I think I have. But I'm still not sure because it's so much I want to talk about on my podcast. So even that I find a title. But I do think I also found a niche because my niche is African American history and culture and arts and things of that nature. So it's mostly African American history. And I called my podcast Stirring the Gumbo Pot because it entails so many different topics, just like a pot of gumbo, where there's so many different things in the pot that makes up this delicious bowl of soup stew. And you can make different kinds of gumbo and you put all kinds of things in it, right? And then this delicious flavor comes out. So it started with stirring the pot, like conversations, like, come on, let's stir the pot. Let's get some shit started, to stirring the gumbo pot because I'm from New Orleans and we cook gumbo in our pots down there. We cook other things, but I wanted to find something that was catchy, something that I thought would stick, and stirring the gumbo pot just kind of stuck. And so that's kind of how I found a niche, so to speak. But I had to go back to, when you think about a niche, you think about like, who am I really? Who do I want to bring to the table? Who am I speaking to? Who is my audience, right? And my audience isn't necessarily people from New Orleans. I hope to have a multitude of different types of people who listen to my podcast. It's not just Black women. It's not just white women. It's everybody. So that also too plays into the whole gumbo pot theme of it all. But now I'm rambling. So I think I found a niche, but I'm still not sure. I'm still working on it, so to speak. But my focus is African American studies, African American history, African American culture, and all things that Black people have done in history. So that's what my goal is. I started out talking about, trying to motivate people and telling people about who I was and getting, introducing myself to my audience and telling them the challenges that I've had throughout my life, such as low self-esteem, lacking courage, and things like that. So I would like to be able to motivate people through my podcast too, because like I said, you can do anything that you put your mind to. You really can. And I'm doing it. So that was my niche question. Kind of went all over the place, but that was my question about my niche. The next question I have is, how did I come up with the name? I think I just explained that in the niche. That kind of, in order to identify my niche, I think I came up with the name first. So I don't really have a identifiable niche yet, but hopefully I will. And I think more than anything, it's encouraging and motivating people, especially people my age, because I'm middle age. I'm 56 years old. And so there's a lot of midlifers who are kind of stuck in their lives. They're stuck in their jobs. There's so much more they wanted to do. They had dreams that they set on the back burner, like I did. Had to raise their families. A lot of us are single moms or single parents who just had to focus on raising our children and putting food on the table and working. And we didn't have time to focus on a dream, right? So I think that is my target audience, to be able to get those people in and to be able to encourage them to live your dreams and your goals before you leave this earth, honey. We ain't got too much longer down here, I'm telling you, because again, I'm 56 years old, and I figured last year was the year for me to get it done, or I just wasn't going to do it. If I didn't start the podcast last year, I don't think I would have started it. So, why did I copyright the name of my podcast? I copyrighted the name because I thought I do believe that it's a hell of a name. And it's sort of like an umbrella. Stirring the Gumbo Pot is a brand. And I hope to be able to build that brand and market that brand and do so much with it as far as like marketing and selling and retail and creating products. I've already have ideas about a cookbook, aprons. You can do so much. I can do so much with the name Stirring the Gumbo Pot. There's so much I can do with it. So I just thought it was important to copyright that name and make it my own so I can brand it. That's why. And to protect my work, right? So you want to be able to protect yourself, and you have to go into this mindset of this is a business. It's not just a podcast, but you have to operate it as a business. And so that was another reason, because it's a business for me. What was one of the most difficult things that happened in season 1? Oh my God. If I had to go back to the first episode of my podcast, where I've had so many, it was so full of and repetitive talking and gibberish and just not being clear and making mistakes. But one of the most difficult things for season 1, I think, was in my fifth episode, where I did a pop-up, I guess, what you could call a pop-up, a remote podcast, where I'd never done before, because most of the work that I do for this podcast is in my home office here, where I'm sitting at now. But there was an opportunity for me to go and interview the cast of the Angola 3 stage play. And so I packed up all my stuff. I even ordered some things online to take with me, because I didn't think I had enough mic stands, things like that. I knew I would be interviewing multiple people. And that's pretty much all I knew. I had never done a video podcast. And so that was my first time doing it. So anyway, I'm going to try and make a long story short. I had a camera and a recorder and a shotgun mic, which was attached to the camera. So somehow I forgot to turn on the shotgun mic. And I was so busy in conversation with the person I was interviewing, that I forgot to turn on the external recorder. So all I had was video, right? And so the second person, I realized my mistake, and I turned on the audio and I don't know. But at the end of the day, with my final interview, I had the recorder audio, and I still didn't have on the external microphone on the camera. So I had so much difficulty with trying to merge the two together. So I had video and audio on 2 separate files. So I had to somehow figure out how to get those two to merge. And so when I figured it out, the recorder was not recording in the correct format in order for my computer to receive it. And it was just a hot mess. It took me about 2 weeks to get it all lined up, but I was successful in doing so. And perhaps I might go into more detail on that, because that's a whole story or video or tutorial rather of what not to do video. But that was my most difficult thing, I think, for season 1 for me. What was the highlight of season 1? So the highlight for me was there's a couple. One, actually going out and be interviewing the cast and crew of a stage play, right? Because I'm a theater person. And so that was very important for me. And it came kind of like, not out of the blue, but like a blessing, so to speak. Like it just kind of happened. The last half of the season just kind of happened. Like God took over and put me in front of people who I didn't think I would be placed in front of. And not that these people are famous or anything like that, but it was just like big for me, because I was outside of myself and then focused on other people and subjects, and not just being a talking head and just rambling from notes that I had. I actually had like people to interview and something going on, like an event. So that was the highlight. That was the first highlight. The second highlight was my interview with Mr. Robert King, who is the last surviving member of the Angola 3. And if you don't know who the Angola 3 is, listen to my podcast, Stirring the Gumbo Pod. It's on iHeartRadio, Apple, and it's on Spotify. And the last episode is dedicated to the Angola 3. And Mr. Robert King is the last surviving member of those 3 who spent 29 years in solitary confinement. And he and I are now friends now. And he's the sweetest gentleman. He's going on 82 years old. And it was an honor interviewing him. And I had no idea who he was. Like a couple months before that interview, I had no idea who he was. And so it's just learning about the history of the Angola 3. That and the interview with the stage play and then interviewing Mr. Robert King, those were the highlights of season 1 for me. What was the most difficult about producing the podcast? Being a one-man band, or the only one having to do all of the production side of it, the audio, the video, the sound, the lighting, the writing, the editing, all of that. All of it. Nothing about it was easy. It was fun because I love producing. And so I made it work for me, but I did not give up. And even though there were some difficulties in all of this, I never gave up. I stayed on it. If I had a problem, I fixed it. And I didn't stop until it was fixed. And that's just the nature of me. I don't stop. I don't let little issues or technical difficulties. I overcome most everything technologically. I fix it. So just the overall, just doing everything by myself, playing all the roles, that was the most difficult. And I know as I move forward, it's going to be less difficult. So yeah. What changes would I have to make to get better? I think being consistent is the main thing that I need to focus on this coming season 2, because I am planning to do a second season. I'm taking a little break right now after the holidays to kind of get my thoughts in order and to strategically figure out how to move forward strategically. And that part is what I have to do to get better. Be more strategic, plan better, and be more consistent. What is the biggest lesson that I've learned? The biggest lesson that I learned is to be prepared. Like, check your equipment. Make sure it's functioning. Make sure you have everything turned on. Keep a checklist of what you need to do and adhere to it. And just always be prepared. That's the biggest lesson for me, right? What do you plan to do differently in season 2? I plan to, again, be more strategic, plan, and be more consistent and stay on schedule. That's what I plan to do for season 2. I'm going to have more topics. I hope to have more interviews. And I think I'm going to have, I know I am going to have a co-host this season. I'm going to bring Damien on. We're going to co-host maybe 1 or 2 episodes this year. I might have more co-hosts this year because it's, I think, easier to have more than one voice on a podcast, right? Because I can just sit here and just regurgitate and repeat myself over and over. But for me, I think bringing on another voice to bounce ideas and conversations back and forth with might play out better for season 2. So those are all the questions I have. Overall, season 1 was a blessing. And I'm so glad that I started a podcast, because it not only gives me something to do, but it is something that's mine, something that I can build, that can turn into something so much bigger and better in my life. And it may be a transition into a new career for me. So that's what I'm hoping for season 2. And we're going to see. But I am going to still continue on with the Stirring the Gumbo Podcast. I have a big season, I hope, in store for me for 2024. And I hope that I gain more followers and more subscribers. My podcast can be found on, you can listen to it on Spotify, Apple, and iHeartRadio. And I hope that you guys enjoy season 2. Now, please go back and listen to my 7 episodes for season 1, and you can see kind of like the things I did to make it better as I grew. I think I forgot to mention that was one of the reasons I started. I wanted people to follow my growth and to see how much I improved and how I got better at doing the podcast. So that's it. That's all. That's my recap for Stirring the Gumbo Podcast Season 1. Thank you guys for listening. And please like this video. Subscribe to my channel at Cajun Peach on YouTube. I can also be found on all platforms at Cajun Peach. That's CAJIN Peach. And I will see you guys on the next video.